cup at a time. Yeah, this is tea time. Yeah, making a difference. One cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time. Making a difference. One cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
And we do it again. Miss Liz is always popping in the closet and not coming out of that closet. I did it earlier and I did it again in 2 seconds of a little blank screen. But we are here, and welcome to everybody out there who's listening to Tea Time tonight. We are joined with an incredible Westward saga author. And I mean, we're going to be talking some Wild West. We're going to be talking some history. We're going to be talking about all those good things. So grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab a beer, grab a glass of whiskey if you'd like. And we're going to have ourselves a good old strong cup of tea tonight. So I'm going to get David in here, but we're going to do all the good stuff that Miss Liz does. And then we're going to sit and we're going to spill it. Good old TEA with David A. Bowles. And I think I have his last name wrong on that. I'm going to have to fix that. So disclaimer on Miss Liz's Tea Times live show. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by Miss Liz is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussion for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Times are done on Thursday this year for Miss Liz. So let me get David in here and let me get that fixed. I'm going to just get David to share a little bit and spill some good old tea with you guys. So welcome, David.
Thank you, Liz. I'm glad to be here I'm meeting more and more Canadian friends. I've got a lot of friends in Canada. And by the way, the name is Bowles, Bowles, like Camellia Bowles.
Oh, Bowles.
Yeah, Bowles. Anyhow, we have some spelling problems on it sometimes, but you got it right, David A. Bowles on the screen there, and that. Well, I see what down on the guest thing. It's you got a D in there, but where you had it in the in your great little intro, it was spelled properly. So yeah, so great.
I'm going to get that fixed in about 30 seconds. I'm just going to get you to share a little bit about who you are, David, and how you got into the whole writing of the Westward Saga, and all the incredible
Now
books.
it's Westward Sagas now.
Sagas. Look
That
at
means
me. I think I got into the whiskey.
in Texas speak, that's a long story. It's a saga.
So I'm going to get you to share a little bit of that, David, and I'm just going to fix this little error up, and so you'll see a thing pop up and down, but it'll be like 30 seconds. But I'm going to get you to share with the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you got into the writing.
Well, I had a story that had to be told, and I heard the story the first time on the front porch of my home in Austin, Texas. We had a little family gathering, and I had grandparents, and I had aunts and uncles, and they told a story about a little boy not far from where our house was. We were sitting on the front porch. Was captured by Indians in Austin, Texas, in 1841, and how the Indians took him off to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to sell him, and his uncle, who was a Texas Ranger. He had retired actually from being a Texas Ranger and thought he was going to get in the real estate business in Austin, Texas. Now we're talking about 1841. The town was founded in 1839. And he took off after the boy alone. The sheriff and Sam Houston, who was in Austin at the time, Sam Houston didn't live there. He was the past president of the Republic of Texas, but back in those days, the president couldn't serve more than 2 years, and I think that's a good thing. But he was there as a representative of St. Augustine County in East Texas. But I heard that story, and I was amazed at the story as one of the aunts and uncles would tell the story. Well, I heard it this way, and another heard it that way, but it was all kind of the basic same story. And I kept trying to get the story. And when I got old enough to get up and start doing some research, I started putting it all together. And it really came together in about 1982 when I had an uncle who decided he brought over a big old feed sack with a Bible in it and a bunch of records and things. And it was my great grandmother's Bible and the family records from 1840.
Oh,
and probably would have never gotten around to writing the book or finishing the research had I not been in a pretty bad motorcycle accident. And so 3 years of rehab allowed me to go through those papers and start doing my research. And I was just amazed, and I kept thinking, somebody's got to write a story about this. And I talked to some great authors, one in particular, a ghostwriter you may know by the name of Cecil Murphy. And Cecil Murphy, he's the one that wrote Franklin Graham's biography and a lot of things like that. And I approached him and he told me, he says, you've done the research, you've already got the characters in your mind, what they should be and how they reacted and that sort of thing. And he says, no author is going to be able to make you happy with that story. And he was right. So I started writing it around 1998, trying to put it together into a story. And my first book, naturally, I had made a lot of changes and stuff as things went along. And I found more information. I kept getting more information. And I had a lot of help from other family members who had some accurate information and some documents. They didn't even really know what they had, but I was able to go through them and read them and find out some of the stuff, some of the letters especially. But the biggest thing, to answer your question is I wrote it because I got into writing it because I couldn't find anybody to write it for me.
Well, that's usually the best way to do it, right? Is write our own stories, because sometimes we have to have that heartfelt story. When we try to tell somebody else how to write it, it doesn't come out the way that we want it to sound or look, right?
Exactly. And I've had a couple of different families approached me wanting to write their family stories, and I said the same thing that Cecil Murphy told me.
So you have some really incredible covers. So where did the covers come from?
Well, you like those covers? Well,
I do. I really like the covers.
I got to tell you, this is interesting for anybody getting off and writing. You got to realize that I wrote those first two books prior to the digital world.
Ooh.
And I had to go to, I had to get in and learn how the typesetting and all that sort of thing worked. And I kept hearing about, things getting digitized and that sort of thing. But the first two books I did was on offset press. And that was interesting, where they had to take the 16 pages and have them front and back. And watching that, I actually went to the printer and watched them print it, stood by like it drove them crazy, but I stood by. And my first two books were printed. And I got to tell you, the first book and the first book and the second book, I hired for my cover a well-known artist and paid him a big price. And the picture that they did on a canvas looked great for the book. But once Amazon got in the book business, and I decided to put them on, I was one of the first authors to go on Amazon with those two books. And I took those, that painted oil, and they were done in beautiful oil. And my daughter has those hanging in her house now. They made beautiful portraits, but they just didn't go over, And so I finally was convinced I had to do it digitally. And I found a graphic artist. The first graphic artist did my 3 books, and she's gone on to other things now. I would have had her do the last 2, but I had the last 2 were done by different. But I interviewed a lot of graphic artists before I chose one. I was really particular about, and I paid high dollar. I hear people say, "Oh, I got my cover done for $200." Well, I wouldn't be bragging about that, But I appreciate you saying that, I was going to say, I don't know, but I got a feeling that this last book is going to win, the cover is going to win award for the cover.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Now, I got to tell you another story, if you don't mind.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
You asked about that, is how strange this digital world and doing Zoom and stuff is. The editor that I chose had done a previous book. This was her second book she had done for me, and she lives in Boston, and so we're doing the work and we're talking, and I said, well, the artist that we used before is not in the business anymore and doesn't want to get into it. And she said, well, I know somebody. And I said, well, give me their information. And she sent me their email. And she didn't send the phone number, but she sent, today everybody works by email. Yeah. So I started, I drew a kind of a rough picture of what I wanted, a stick man type, because I'm not an artist. And I kind of put it back. I had wanted the Hotel Rio, because the Hotel Rio is really important, because that was the sheriff's office. They didn't have the money to build, they didn't have a jail. They didn't have anything. That hotel was his office, truly. I mean, even though it's a fictional story, the events actually happened. And I'm trying to get this done and explain to her over the phone what I wanted, and not over the phone, but through email. And so I asked Janice, I said, if I could talk to this woman, I think I could explain better, and she said, well, he says, here, I'll give you her phone number. She gave me the phone number, and the minute I saw it, it was the same area code as mine. So when I called her, I said, can I ask you where you live? And she says, I live in San Antonio, Texas. And she doesn't live very far from me. We met for lunch, and I was able to sit there with her and try and explain to her the big thing. If you notice in the back, that's the Rio Grande River. And that's how it looked back in those days. Now, it doesn't look like that now because they built a big dam up above there. So you wouldn't see that winding river. You'd see a big lake is what you see. But at that time, it was a winding little river that went by. And then it was Davis Landing down there. And that's where they came in and made an army camp. And the city just was one of those cities that sprang up overnight due to that army camp being there. So, but she did a wonderful job. And I'm really proud of those books. And I don't know if you notice, I have them on display right behind my back.
I can see them a little bit.
A little bit. They're a little far back there, but yes, I'm real proud of those. And thank you
they're
for asking
gorgeous
about that cover. You're not the first person that said that about the cover. I don't know if my book's going to win any awards, but I know that cover is going to.
No, they're gorgeous. Really, really gorgeous. There's a lot of work that was put into those covers. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can, to me, I can see a cheap book cover. I know it's or it's something that you just got off a line themselves, created themselves, or they made 4 or 5 boxes and used 2 different colors and, did it in about 15 minutes. And I spent 2 or 3 years writing my book. I want it to be dressed up. I want it dressed up for the ball.
So by writing these books, David, what did you learn about your family?
I learned more. As I started writing the books, I had to create scenes, and how did that happen, and this and that. And I really began to fill in a lot of the blanks, writing the story. And some of it I had to create, because a good example of that, people ask, well, what do you mean? Show me what you mean. And I said, well, look at that cover on my second book, which is the Comanche Trace. Will, the Texas Ranger's riding a white horse. I tell him, I said, that horse died long before I was born. So I had no idea what color that horse was. So, but most of the story is pretty active. But I researched the family all the way back to their home, original home in Chester County, Pennsylvania, when they came over from Ireland about 1712. And so the family has been here a little over 300 years. Wow. And I've got cousins coming out. Now, amazing thing is, it's not just on my father's side, but on my mother's side at all. And they grew up, they were true Texas pioneers. And actually, I have here, I want to show you a picture of my mother, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind at all. I love
when she was 17 years old.
Oh, wow, look at her. She's beautiful.
And she was a cowgirl. And she was a cowgirl and married a cowboy and and been a lot of cowboys in the family. Just about everybody was in the cattle business, because that's just about what we had. We had cedar cattle and pecans, and it was country living. And I'm glad I'm the last generation of my family to have enjoyed that. My children now are living in the city, and they don't have animals, and I had to explain to the grandchildren how milk didn't just come out in one of those little cardboard boxes,
Well, here in Canada, we have them in bags.
You have them in bags, yes, I'll tell you. And I'll tell you, I'm amazed at the difference in the cost of milk in Canada versus the United States. And I couldn't figure that out. And it's government subsidies is what it is. It's the reason. It's the Dairy Association in the United States is a very good lobbyist. That
So, what kind of feedback are you getting back from your books, David? From
it's
the
been
from
it's
the
been
like different age ranges?
Liz, it's been wonderful. I had, we get these back. Some of them are professional reviews. Some, are from readers. Originally, the advanced readers were the ones that really surprised me. And I have a group of advanced readers who I've got to know over the years who read heartily, yeah, and those advanced readers, I rely on them so much, and each one of them is different. I've got one that's a cowboy that lives in a barn in Lubbock, Texas, with his horse, and I rely on him to give me accurate information about tackle, for our horses and hardware and things like that, and wagons, and he's my technical for that sort of thing. And then I have a gal that she is just one of those that she can spot an I that's not dotted across the room, And so I use a vast array of different people from different walks of life who would know about certain things. And that's worked very well. And their reviews came back. And I really didn't have, I had a totally different name in mind for it, but for each book that I do, after somebody reads it, I asked them, I said, what do you think about the title? And two of them said, the title needs to be The Sheriff of Starr County. And I talked to them on the phone. I said, well, why would you say that, the Sheriff of Starr County? And says, well, that's what it's about. Wheels, the Sheriff of Starr County. So it really tells the story of what it's about. I don't particularly, because it's such a long title. You'll notice my other book, Spring House, Adam's Daughters, Comanche Trace. This is the longest title I've ever had to deal with, and I've always been of the theory you keep your titles short, but everybody seemed to want that, and I let them have it.
I gave them the big one.
Yes, and they come back with these readers, these people that really get into the books. If an author doesn't listen to his readers, he's sure making a big mistake.
Yep.
Because I've had people. One of the reviews that I got just recently from a lady that I know, and she read the book, and I ran into her at a social event. I asked her what she thought about it, and she says, well, I didn't like the ending. And I said, what do you mean? And she says, well, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want the story to end. And I said, well, don't worry, there's going to be another bit.
Well, that's usually how it is. The ending is really like, is there going to be another book?
Yes.
So you got to leave it open, right? At the
and
end.
That's why you write series. And I'm in the process of putting that all together. And I'm not exactly sure which direction I'm going to go with, but I am going to. Will's getting pretty old. He's going to have to die here pretty. And the sad thing about Will is that's one thing on the vital statistics I don't have about him. His name was William W. Smith. One of the things we don't have on him is the date of birth or where he died.
Oh.
So that kind of gives me some liberty there. If I knew, I would write it in just the way it is, and that's the way I've done it on everything, just the way it was. I mean, people who are doing their genealogy work. This book I wrote for entertainment, but I put a little education in there, and the genealogy of the family is in the book, not in a structured way with your little trees and all, that sort of thing. It's just, it's there. Will was 20. Matter of fact, today, on the 4th, it was Will's birthday on the 4th of April.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was actually his birthday. And when he came to Texas with 10 other members of the family, he was 23 when when he stepped on Texas soil. And so, yeah, I learned a lot. You asked a question earlier. I learned a lot about my family because I had to memorize those things to make the book work. And if I worked with it so much, I had the documents in that Bible of when they were born, the children were born, and that sort of thing. But you look at it, you don't pay a lot of attention to it. But once I spent 20 years writing these 5 books. And I could have done it faster, but I wanted to go to the places. And I tell everybody, if it's in the book and I've described a place, I've been there.
Well, that's cool. I think we're going to get into what is your tea. So if I ask you what tea you're serving my guest tonight, David, what words are you going to give me for the TEA?
The Texas Education Agency.
And can you tell us a little bit about the Texas Education Agency? That's
what we call our school system, our statewide school system. And they're kind of the overall of all, the independent school districts in the state. And sometimes they do a good job and sometimes they don't do such a good job. But they have been the Texas Education Agency as long as I can remember. And that's where all of our decisions are made on how we teach our children or don't teach them, that sort of thing. And we've got a lot of things going on in Austin, Texas right now as the legislature's in session. We're a little different than most states. We only allow our legislatures to meet 140 days out of 2 years, and they got to finish their business in that 140 days, and they got 39 days left. And so you'd be surprised if every country did that, and they can't go home, they can't adjourn. They must adjourn at that time, but if they haven't balanced the budget for 2 years, and if they haven't set aside for the rainy day fund, a certain amount of money, they can't gavel the close. I mean, they will have to reopen and start another session. But generally, they want to go home because they don't make a lot of money. So our Texas legislatures only make $600 a month. So they're ready to go home because they have other jobs.
So I want to ask you this question. We have a bunch of comments that are coming in and they want to know, like, your chairman, president, private schools. It's because all of my guests, I put you guys at the bottom here, and I put like your award-winning author, director, president, chairman, and leader. David is a part of a lot of huge accomplishments, and I want to get into your accomplishments that you've come through, David, and share a little bit for the viewers and listeners out there on some of the accomplishments you've gotten. Is the Greater San Antonio Chambers of Commerce 1994 Business Leader of the Year Award, Lifetime Membership, Texas Association of Business, appointed of the White House Conference of Small Business 1995, appointed by Mayor Nelson Wolff to the San Antonio Police Review Board, served 1994 to 1998. Do you want to share a little bit on some of your accomplishments?
Well, I like talking about my new job now, but I've had 3 jobs in my life. I worked for Hiram Walker, Canadian company, for 26 years. Retired at 55, decided to open my own business, and which is still being ran by my daughter. And after I had my accident and rehabilitation, she stepped in and kind of took over the business, and she's running it good and put it on steroids. And I had time to write. But during that time that I was running the business, San Antonio meant a lot to me. It was home. I moved. I was originally born. I was born in Austin, but I moved to San Antonio in '68, and I immediately got involved in community affairs. And Hemisphere 68 was one of them, and that was a World Fair, by the way. You weren't born then.
No, I wasn't even thought about.
Yeah, but anyhow, I from the hemisphere and working with the Chamber of Commerce and doing different things. I was involved in small business. Served on the trust as a trustee of the a national a small NFIB, they call it, National Federation of Independent Businessmen, and served on a lot of boards and committees. And I tell you, when the Rodney King thing happened out in California, at that time I was on the Greater San Antonio Crime Prevention Commission. It's now called the Public Safety Commission. But I call the mayor at that time. His name, Nelson Wolf was his name, and he's been a good friend for many years. And I told him, I said, you know, this could happen to us. What's happened out there, the rioting and all that sort of stuff, and what kind of thing do we have set up now? You know, for when police overstep their bounds. And he says, well, we have a police review board. And I said, well, are there any civilians on it? And he says, no, there's not. I said, we need to fix that. And you know what? The next week he went to the city council meeting and they decided to do it. And I was the first one they put on the board. The first civilian they put on the board. So yeah, I'll tell you what, someone asked me once what it was like. And I said, if you could imagine serving on a grand jury for 4 years. I was on that board for 4 years. I saw heard over 250 cases. And we had to make a decision whether that policeman would stay or go. And sometimes or take a 30-day, you know, a suspension with no pay. Then you had the responsibility to the citizen who made the complaint. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I did it and I got into it. I had no idea how tough it would be, but it was when, and what they did with me is they put me in a police car and I went patrolled on every shift that they had around San Antonio, saw some things that, man, and you just don't understand what those policemen have to do and how fast they have to react. And it was one of the toughest jobs I ever had. And it put some years on me for 4 years because there were some deaths involved in that situation that I had to make a decision one way or the other. And it was hard because you look at you look at all the information and then you had to make a decision. And yes, that's what the police review board was. I think every city ought to have one. If they don't, they ought to get one.
So not every city has one.
Not as, you know, there are little small towns, I'm sure, that don't have, but a lot of them have. It's just policemen on the board. Well, what use is that? You stop to think about that, you know, because they're going to say, well, there's nothing but policemen on that board. Now they have citizens on the board, and it kind of it weighs the situation. I will be the first to tell you that I was shocked to find out that when it came to when we decided someone had overstepped their bounds, and we had to start issuing what we recommend as punishment, the certified officers were tougher than the civilians on the board.
Wow.
They were really tough on their own. Policemen don't like bad cops.
So back in your stories, like when you did some of your history on your family there, David, was there some of the police, like sheriffs and that in your family as well? Is that like through the bloodline?
Yes, there are a lot of law enforcement people in my family. And actually there were 3 Texas Rangers. There's been, and an old uncle that I had, I remember him. He was a constable in the south of the river there, and he was called law south of the Colorado. The police, Austin police didn't hardly go over there. They kind of left him alone. And I used to ride with him. I rode with him as my mother was sick for a while and wasn't able to take care of me. And he and his wife took me in. And I had to, he picked me up at school, and then he got a call, and he had to take me on. He had to take me with him. Probably today they wouldn't look too good on that, but that's the way things were in those days.
So are there still Texas Rangers?
Oh, certainly, yes. The Texas Rangers still exist. They're about 254 strong. It's a very you have to work your way up through law enforcement, usually through the State Department of Public Safety as highway patrolmen, and they look, and when they have openings coming up, I believe the number is 254. They keep it at that, and that's the number of counties we have. One ranger for every county, and so when an opening's coming up, they start interviewing, and so when someone gets that status, and they're very much like the FBI. They're only called in when it's something that steps over the bound. You'll hear about the Texas Rangers are involved in a case maybe where there's might be politicians, especially. They love to get politicians. And one Texas Ranger friend I know have, and I belong to the Texas Rangers Association. He told me one time, I asked him, I said, did you ever put a bank robber in jail? And he says, no, but I put a lot of bankers in jail. Yeah, they're a good group. And I belong to the farmer, it's called a farmer. Not a farmer, FAR, but farmer, FOR, Farmer Texas Rangers Association, and I also have a foundation up in Kerrville, Fredericksburg, Texas. And I do some things for them on that. They help me out some on my books and speaking engagements and that sort of thing.
So we have a question here for you, David.
You all right?
Oh, did you lose me?
Yeah, I didn't hear you. I didn't hear what you said.
I must have skipped out.
Okay.
So we have a question here. It says, what message do you have for the people who don't like police? Well,
the people that don't like police probably don't like anybody, There's people like that. There's not much you can do about it. If people hate, they're going to hate. And that's why whatever, gun control or whatever, it's hate that we got to stop. People that are going to do these bad things, regardless, and I'm not going to get political on this, but there are certain people that just aren't happy, and you can't make them happy. And, I just try and leave those kind of people alone. That's what I say. And if they don't like police, like I said, they probably don't like anybody.
Yeah.
And there's some, let me tell you, out of every policeman, I figured it down. We had two, at the time I was on that commission, that they had 2,000 policemen. And there were only about 22 who were doing all the complaints that we had. And it was, they would get into trouble, out of trouble. And I'd usually, after a second or third time, my recommendation to the police chief is says, cut your losses and get this guy out of here before he causes some problems. But that means the difference, they were all good.
Yeah.
And I would meet a policeman out, and I'd always, if I saw a policeman in a restaurant or something and they were having coffee or lunch or whatever, I'd always pick up the tab. It didn't cost that much. And policeman would ask me, said, well, who are you? And I said, I'm David Bowles. And you're on the You're on the police review board. Yes, sir. That's me. And he says, I've never met you. And I said, that's a good thing.
Well, I think it's like anything, right?
Yes, yes. And so, yeah, I answered the guy, I don't know how else to say that, but it's kind of like people say, well, I don't like teachers. Well, they probably don't like, whatever, they don't like preachers or they don't like lawyers or nothing anybody can do about that. But, some of these people may have a legitimate claim. A policeman may have, they think, done them wrong.
Yep.
If your town has a police review board, take the complaint to most cities, it's called Civilian Police Review Board. And there's a place you can go. You got a complaint, put it. Civilians like me will listen to you. And if you got a good complaint, that officer might need to go. And you see that happening.
Thank you for answering that, David.
Yeah. Hope I did. Okay.
Well, and it's like anything, right? There's good and there's bad in any field. It's not just policemen. There's good and bad doctors, there's good and bad teachers. That's just how life is. We have our good and we have our bad. And we just have to, not judge everybody that has that title because of one bad person, If we have one bad cop and we have 10 good cops, we're not going to punish the 10 good cops because of one bad one.
The number's 1%. And I want to tell you, that 1% rule is pretty, that there's only 1% of people that hate policemen. And there's only 1% of people that commit crimes. And I rode with one officer, his name was Eddie Perez. His father was a great friend of mine, and I was with him, the son, and I was riding with him on a cruise, and we went to a thing that was over a dog. And the people, both sides, he wasn't trying to take sides or anything. He was just trying to tell them what they needed to do. And both of them treated him terribly, spoke to him horribly. Yeah. And we got back in the car and I said, I don't know, Eddie, how you handle this. And he says, you know what? He said, did you see those people across on the other side of the street standing there? And I said, yes. And he says, I could tell they were waiting there to step in if I needed help. And he said, for every one person that might want to harm a policeman, there's 99 that'll step in to try and save his life. And I've seen that happen. That happens here in Texas quite a bit. You'll see policemen on the ground wrestling with somebody, and 2 or 3 cars will pull up and they'll help the officer out. So yeah, it's 1%. That's what I say. So I'm not going to worry about that 1%. I'm going to enjoy those 99% of the people that like me, and I like them.
And I'm the same way. I don't put everybody in a box because of one bad person, one bad seed, because there's 99 good seeds out there. So why should we infest those 99 because of one bad one?
That's exactly.
So I want to thank this viewer and this listener for their questions and that.
Well, that's a good question. I was surprised at that question.
We do get questions from all over, and that we are streaming multiple places. So again, thank you for your question. I do appreciate that. But David, I want to get into some of the other stuff that you've done. You've done police work, but you've also done, you're an honorary chairman for the San Antonio March of Dimes, the Western Gala. Was back in 1996. Could you tell us a little bit about the March of Dimes? Because
that's the March of Dimes. That was for polio originally, and March of Dimes then became birth defects. And do you have in Canada a March of Dimes? Is that a charity?
Not sure.
Okay. Well, it started out when a dime was worth something, of course, and it started out long before the cure for polio, and they had a lot to do with helping Jonas Salk and funding his search for a cure for polio, which he did. But once the cure came, and that's the interesting thing about this, is that when a cure comes, it puts a lot of people out of business.
Yep.
And you think about some of these illnesses that we have, like cancer. They keep looking for a treatment. Nobody's really trying to find a cure, and that's a problem. But the March of Dimes was one of those associations that I felt a lot for, and actually, my secretary was heavily involved in that organization. And the year before, and I don't put this on my deal. I was the Bachelor of the Year, and I raised the most money being the Bachelor of the Year for the auction, and raised the most money. And matter of fact, I raised more money than all the other the guys competing with me put together. And so the next year they wanted to do something for me, so they made me an honorary chairman of the next gala. And today we call them administrative assistants. That my administrative assistant did all the work. I just went and bought me a good old black cowboy hat and wore my black tux, and that's about what I did. Yeah, well, I did.
So you didn't get a blue tux, you got a black one.
No, I didn't get a blue tux. I had a black. Matter of fact, my administrative assistant at that time, she told me, she said, you wear a black tux and you don't, and see, I don't wear a typical tie, I wear a bolo. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you one thing, I'm not wearing a bow tie, I'm going to wear a bolo tie. And this is what I wore at that gala.
Yeah, my dad used to wear one all the time too.
Yeah, they're just handy. You get them off, and of course I lost the use of my right arm, and so I can't tie a tie. So this makes it really perfect.
So do you have those Western snap shirts?
Snap shirts? Well, no, they're buttons.
Like those snaps that just go snap, snap, snap?
No, I refuse to do that. I have a little thing that does my buttons, and I have my shirts made, and they ask me, so you want to put snaps? And I don't like snaps. I just still try to do the buttons, but it's pretty tough for me sometimes to get a button done.
So I want to get into your color blue. You gave me the color blue. Why the color blue?
Well, the sky is blue. And I think that's beautiful. And there's nothing more beautiful than a West Texas sky.
Oh, I like that answer. So they have beautiful sunsets and sunrises back there.
Yes, they do. And I found the further you go west, the prettier the sunsets are.
Yeah. So you gave me the word determined to describe yourself as a person. Why that word determined?
Well, I had a learning disability as a child, and I had a real difficult time. And I used to drive the teachers nuts because I was fidgeting and causing problems. Can't tell you how many times my parents had to go to school, set me down and talk to me. But I just had a real hard time studying. While the teacher was talking, I was looking out at that beautiful blue sky and the butterflies flying, and I really didn't give a damn about their English or what. I was doing my own thing, and unfortunately, I didn't. In my senior year, my teacher told me, and matter of fact, it was my second run at trying to get graduated from high school. She said to me, she says, you're just not college material. Why don't you just go out and why don't you join the service? And I thought about it, and that's what I did. I left school one day. I went down, a day I turned 17 years old, I went down to the Naval Reserve office down there and signed up. And within a few weeks, I was off, and I didn't get to graduate with my class. And but I didn't let that. It made, when I came back from the service, I trying to find a job, and I didn't graduate from high school. I went, and we have something in Texas. I got it through the Navy, a GED. which is probably just as good. But I've had to pretty well educate myself because in a classroom environment, I couldn't pay attention to the class. And even now, I go off and go and take a conference or something and try and listen to a keynote speaker that I want to hear. But if I can get their tape and sit down and listen to it, I can catch it, get it, and I got it. And determined, I didn't let the fact that I didn't have an education. Most of the people, when I went to work for Hiram Walker, and I got on with Hiram Walker, they didn't ask me about my education advance. They saw me working at Hemisphere 68, and they said, "We want that boy." And that's how I ended up with them and spent 26 years in the alcoholic beverage business before getting out at the age of 55 and starting my own business. So I've had three, things. I've tried and made them all a success. And I'll tell you, all the careers I haven't only had three careers, but I've had several businesses along the way, and they've all been successful. And out of everything that I've done, writing is the easiest and most enjoyable of anything I've ever done. But it's the hardest work to get done. When you get the book finished, the work just begins. The fun's over, and I'm going to tell you, you're doing things like I do 2 or 3 of these a week, Liz, podcast and things. But before these podcasts and things came so personal, I got in my car. I called around radio stations, TV. Back in those days, you'd go and they're tickled to death to get somebody to talk to them at their noon show or whatever. I did drive time shows. And I drove 100, 200 miles sometimes. And I can tell you at my age, I'm really glad that we're doing this on Zoom and stream. But it is work. And, I've done book signings, with the new book out, I drive 200 or 300 miles, go to a bookstore in the Dallas market, and don't get out of the store until 8 or 9 o'clock. And it's tough business. And anyone that gets into it, there are a lot of other things a lot easier to do, Liz, as you probably know.
There is a lot.
Yeah.
So
if
anybody
with you doing all, I just gotta say I was impressed with you doing as many of these podcasts as you've done.
I've already done 40 and we're only in April. So, and I got another 112 to do. So I'm doing 116 more to go.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's going to be a full year for Tea Time. So if anybody would like to get your books, David, where can they get your books?
Well, of course, any bookstore can get them. They're available on Amazon.com. And my website is David A. Bowles, author, the word author at the end, .com. DavidABowles.com. And I also have the Westward Sagas, which is westwardsagas.com. And that's spelled WESTWARDSAGAS.com. And everybody has a hard time with that. They want to put, because I'm an author, they want to put the word W-O-R-D instead of W-A-R-D. So they have some problems with that. But I hope they'll take a look at one of my books. On my website, I've got a special on there for a great special on there. They buy the whole set, which is a good way to read the set. Of course, they might want to just buy one and check it out. But this map I've got over on this side is offered for free. It's a map of Texas back in the period of 1845 to 1850. I found that map and it gave me so much knowledge about where Texas was. I don't know if you can see or not that map over my.
Yeah, I see it a little bit.
Well, it goes all the way up to the Wyoming border. A lot of people don't realize Texas went that far. And then eventually Texas sold 63 million acres back to the United States, which that then became New Mexico, Colorado, and all the states there. So, but that's a beautiful map suitable for framing. And if anyone buys the full set of my books, they get that map for free. And it's a collector's item. A collector's item mounted on 65-pound, mounted on, it's not mounted, it's printed onto 65-pound paper. So it's a beautiful thing.
So any plans for book 6?
Yes, it's right here on my desk here. You can't see it, but it's right here. I'm working on it. And I'm also trying to do a nonfiction about the family ranch and what happened to it. And the history of it, because it was in my family for three generations, and so about the time I'd gotten in the liquor business.
Oh wow! So you're in the liquor business. So you do make whiskey.
Well, we made it big time, and I'll tell you what, my dad and his brothers, I have good reason to believe that they made it too back during Prohibition times. And I cornered him on that one day, and I said, Dad, my dad's been dead for quite a few years ago. I said, Dad, I found that picture of you and my mother back in about 1939. And I said, that was during the Depression. That sure was a fancy Ford coupe you had for the day. And he just looked at me and he says, son, you might not be the first member of this family to be in the liquor business. You just might be the first one to have a liquor license.
So it runs in the family.
Yeah. That's right. Right, that's right. It runs in the family. But I had a lot of fun working for I.M. Walker. They were great people to their employees.
Well, I really want to thank you, David, for joining me on Tea Time and sharing a good, strong cup of tea. Texas Education Agency. We're going to have to look into that. And you got your cup. So I always love when my Tea Time guests bring a cup of tea, because then I know that they love the tea too. So, David, any final words before we wrap up your Tea Time tonight?
I didn't hear that. I missed.
Any final words before we wrap up your Tea Time tonight?
You want to find some words?
Final words.
Final. Sorry, where am I hearing it? I think my batteries are getting low. My batteries are getting
Maybe
low.
it's my ears that are acting up.
No, it's my ears. I tell you, 80 years old, my hearing is not as good as it once was. But the final words are, I just hope that, everybody that writes finds them a good reader, and they give them a good story. And I encourage all the independent writers that there are out there today, and I mean there are millions, to do good work, and you'll get good readers.
Well, thank you so much. And it was a real honor to sit and spill some tea with you and get to know Texas a little bit better. And I got to see a little map, and I got to see some incredible books. And if anybody would like to grab a copy of these books, check out David's website. Check out all of the links that have been put into the comments if you're checking that out. Check out Miss Liz's Tea Time YouTube channel. Give it a quick subscribe, ring the bell, and you can see all these incredible tea times at any time you want. You can watch them 100 times if you want. You watch them over and over. If you want to reach out to any of my guests, please reach out to me, Miss Liz, at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. And again, David, thank you so much for sitting and spilling a good, strong cup of tea tonight with me on Tea Time. And again, thank you to the viewers, the supporters. Thank you for the questions. We really appreciate them. And I want to thank everybody. And I will see everybody next Thursday for 3 new shows, 3 new flavors, and 3 new stories. You just never know where we're going to be traveling next week. This week we travel to the United States and Canada. Next week we don't know where we're going. So you'll have to stay tuned because we travel the world with Miss Liz and Tea Time. So again, thank you all. And I will see you all Thursday, 10 a.m. for the first Tea Time, then 3 p.m. in the afternoon and 7 p.m. in the evening. And again, thank you, David, for an amazing Tea Time tonight. Don't leave. I'm just going to close up the live.